All right, you guys ready? We're gonna go.
We're live, man.
3, 2. All right, I'm gonna welcome everybody to the Planning Commission meeting. I know it's been a minute since we've had one of these, so welcome, welcome. So glad you guys could be here. And we are going to start tonight's meeting with a Pledge of Allegiance led by Commissioner Scola.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, thank you. And we are going to open up the meeting with public comments, and we just ask that you guys follow the following guidelines. Just please speak for 3 minutes or less. State your name and city and direct comments to the entire commission, knowing that we will not respond. So the time is now yours. Oh, and I would like to acknowledge that Commissioner Boatwright is not in attendance with us tonight. So public comment period is now open. And seeing as no one is rushing the podium to make public comment, we're going to go ahead and move on with the meeting agenda. First action items, we have the consent agenda for our July 11th. I know, a long time ago, 2024 meeting minutes. Was there any comments from the commission about the minutes as they were written?
I had a quick update in the public hearing portion of the action item number 3. It refers to Chris Kane, which I believe it's properly written in some more other parts where it's Chris Cave, I believe. I think his name is Chris Cave. And it says he's with Nelson Homes, but I don't think he's with Nelson Homes. Yeah, right. So anyway, it reads right now Chris Kane of Nelson Homes. I think it should say Chris Cave of Reeve Associates on behalf of Nelson Homes. But anyway, that's I mean, it's a nitpick. It's not really a big deal.
So was it Chris Kane or Chris Cave? Cave. So maybe just update with the appropriate person and context. Is that okay? I'm fine with that. Anyone else? Comments? I thought everything else was fine. A very succinct way of discussing or writing up a long conversation. Okay, all right. Then I'll ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda for July 11th to 2024 minutes with the amendments we just discussed.
And do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, that was
Yes.
Commissioner McFadden that seconded it. And then all in favor, starting with Commissioner Roberts?
Yes.
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 And yes. So moved. Moving right into our conditional use permit, 24-02 for Young Quick Lube. I'm gonna ask if Lance Evans would like to kind of give us a little background on this.
Yes, so this is beginning, this is a conditional use permit for the use of the, and it's actually going to be the Young Tire and Service Center. Extension. And this is the first of 2 approvals, I guess, because this is going to be the conditional use. We're looking at the land uses, any particular items. The other part of that will come later is the site plan approval. And there's more items that need to be nailed down, not in more details, but we wanted to at least get the land use permit issued so that we know that, yeah, it's okay to do this or it's not, or any else, any major issues. And go forward with that. So that's what we're looking at. Is this an appropriate conditional use? Because it's over a site over 1 acre in a commercial highway zone, it requires a conditional use. One of them, as you can see on the site plan, is just looking at the service center with phase that service. It is I too, with access to the dermatology project that's coming in on the south part, let's share some parking. But staff has reviewed it, you've seen Brandon's memo in the packet. We are recommending, there's several things that we need to add as conditions of approval, just to make sure that we catch them later. I don't think there are issues. I don't think the applicant has any objections. He can speak to that later, but basically just to modify the plans to meet the site plan requirements as per the engineer's statements. The sidewalk location needs to be relocated so that complies with the American Disabilities Act. It's challenging because the road expansion on 2700 East is coming in the future. We don't want to put an expensive sidewalk in and then just a few years later move it. So we're trying to iron exactly where that's going to be, but it has to be there. It has to tie to an intersection. It's actually way harder than you would think. Think about it. It's just give it a headache. So, staff's recommendation is that the gray CMU on the building have some modulation or articulation added to it. It spikes it up a little bit. This is the dominant corner of the city. It's our gateway. We'd like to take it up a little bit. And then we gave out letters from the oil and gas easement holders on the property, and then cross access easements provided the adjacent property owner to the south, which is the dermatologist. Also, I sent to you some recommendations for additional, as we've looked at the project a little bit more, just even in the last couple of days, speaking to a couple different things. One is we noticed that the tire storage area that's at the northeast corner of the developed site is this chain link fence, and we'd like to have that recommended that gets replaced with an 8-foot masonry wall, so that the tire storage is not the most dominant feature on the site. And that's per a certain section of code there. I included that in the sheeting. The other thing is that we have the photometric now, which is one of Brandon's comments, that we needed that. It's pretty good. We like to see no light get off site. So the numbers at the corners of the property lines should be down to 0. The applicant has stated that they will work on shielding. The photometric plan doesn't represent that, but their intention is to put that on there. So we'll have that as a condition of approval, or at least staff recommendations. We have that in addition to what's in the staff report as site plan minimize 0 limits at the property line.
Now, when you're saying property line, is there a specific property line
Well,
or all property lines? So on all sides?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so that way they like the site, they're not liking anything beyond that.
Okay.
And I don't know, just because it's a good plug. Bright Lock Storage came in a few months ago.
Mhm.
They redid everything. They put in LED lights. That place glowed,
Lit up.
right? But they went out of their way. They worked with us really good. They put shielding on and then dimmed the lights, and now it's substantially better. So I think, there are some tweaking that needs to happen. Modern lights allow us a lot of flexibility, but that'll be the intent, is to get that down. So the site's lighting the site and not other things. And then the third recommendation for staff is that the parking spaces in front of there are 2 parking spaces going into the natural gas substation driveway, the road, access road.
Mhm.
Right.
Fire department was a little concerned that, well, if we need to get in there to shut the gas off, and there's cars there, that might be a problem. So those parking spaces. So those are the recommendations of conditions of approval, I think. A lot of use and good city and going in the right direction. So with those conditions, staff recommends approval.
Brandon's like, I've put too much brain power into this thing already. All right, well, then I guess given that, I'm gonna open it up to the commission. Does anybody have any questions? They'd like to ask, obviously, we've got the, architect here tonight with us. So if you've got any questions about the plans, the renditions, anything like that, we can bring him up to the stand. But I think right now, let's just go with our questions. Comments,
Yeah,
thoughts?
I have several.
Yeah, I mean, I'll let you go first.
So
I've always been super open and love the idea of any commercial properties that we do. And I'm not necessarily completely opposed to this. However, this is like my world and this is what I do is automotive. So I just have a few concerns and then I have some opinions based on, I'm down in Centerville and we attempted to move to a corner lot and we weren't even close to be able to get approval for it because they didn't want an auto repair shop on a dominant corner for obvious reasons. So this, based on looking at the bays, so I see like 3 pits, 2 posts, and an alignment rack. And if we're talking service, and then what we define as minor as a compared to major, in short of not having the qualified technicians to do certain things, there's no service advisor that's going to turn away work that's coming in a shop. That being said, you now, if it's slow enough and if tires and other things have slowed down, you have the potential of having, you know, bigger jobs, which require cars to sit and you turn into, I mean, I know I checked before I left, like I have 13 cars in my lot right now that some have been there. Now, we don't push people to get them out. Maybe they'll do better at that, but we also just no, we don't want to put people in a bad situation that they're already in. So anyway, my point is that now you end up with dead cars sitting around a lot or cars apart waiting for parts, and it just starts looking like a junkyard. Gosh, there we go. I couldn't think of the word I was looking for. So my concern, and that doesn't mean that I'm opposed to the idea, I guess, is, I mean, even if you drive by Burt Brothers in Farmington, that's probably a good example. Like, I mean, there's a few cars that have probably been there, I don't know, for the last several years that haven't moved in that parking lot. So, and a lot of them become like maybe employees. And like I said, Young might manage it way better than others do. But being in this industry, and I understand how the waves of this industry go, that they will fill those bays up with however they can, if as long as they have the technicians to do so, which leads to cars that can be dead in a lot. Now, if it was just doing, you know, tires and lube service, like when it was, I think there was at one point we talked about the Quick 5. I think they were looking at being in that lot. I swear that was on the agenda one time that they were looking at it, but something like that. Like they're just, yeah, they're just in and out. Like you might have traffic, but you're never going to have something that's like dead and stop there. But this implies that, like, you know, things can get towed in and be left. And I guess I'm just looking at it from a visual standpoint. I love the idea of the business. And I love the idea of, I mean, well, not for me, but people having the ability to use a shop that's close and not having to travel for it. I think it's important to have. And I think if you're going to put anything, this is something that'll be useful for everybody for sure. I just worry about, like, if we're talking this lot over here could eventually fill up and just start turning into a junkyard, and like you're coming off this overpass and like that's the first thing you see. I guess what we got told in Centerville is we were looking at potentially being able to do it, but we were going to have to build the masonry wall that went around the entire property. So you couldn't see anything driving in, which for us, blew our budget out of the water just from the wall alone. So it ended up not being a thing. And I'm not saying that needs to happen. I'm just thinking, I'm just like the visuals and knowing this industry and knowing what can turn into, and I mean, it just depends. Again, this is their first time doing this, and they're doing it from the franchise dealership world, and those stay relatively clean. So I would suspect that it'll stay clean. I just wanted to address my concern on what I know these properties can turn into, and what I know from a sales perspective, what you're willing to bring in to fill your bays with, because you have people that need to eat and you're going to bring in whatever you can to keep people busy. And at times that could be jobs maybe bigger than they can handle, but it's going to require parts. Like you're just going to be waiting. And so with the messes, so that was my big concern. It's just a really big parking lot. That's a lot of parking stalls to eventually store cars in, and they just kind of pile up, and then going through the process of getting abandoned car titles and stuff like that. I mean, you can do it. It just takes it takes a lot of time. And they're not going to probably want to upset their customers and start impounding people's cars and moving them off somewhere. And now their reviews go down because somebody's paying $1,000 to get a car at an impound. So those were just some of my concerns. Again, like that, I love the idea of any commercial idea that we're talking about. That was just one of my concerns. And then my only other concern, and maybe that'll be on the next one, would be like the plan for like oil separation and waste oil storage and pickup plan for that. I mean, something like this is gonna, on average, probably have 500-ish gallons a week is what I would estimate that they're gonna have being picked up, along with probably, a few hundred gallons of antifreeze. So those areas can get super messy. And I just wonder where, I was trying to decide where I thought that would go. I mean, obviously it's going to probably be somewhere in the back, but those are things you just can't avoid not having space for, and how it's going to be kept up and cleaned. I'm not on a main road where I'm at. Our stuff's all in the back, but it's not the cleanest areas, no matter what you try to do with it. I mean, oil's just messy. And then oil separation, as far as like where, and that would maybe be more of your world on even, that maybe answer like what they might likely end up doing. So we're not, I know you do water, but maybe you've dealt with, like, I'm just wondering like where,
Carbon removal.
yeah, like
Absolutely.
where they're
Yeah.
gonna separate it. Like what's the risk of getting into any of our water supply of any sort? So those, again, I'm all for any commercial project. Those are just the main two concerns that I had, and knowing this world really, really well, and like what comes with this world. And then being on like the most predominant corner that we have in South Weber, and sure, for the next few years, a beautiful brand new building is going to be awesome. I guess I'm looking at it in like 10 years or so, or if Young decides to sell it and independent, an independent shop that comes in and buys it, and they don't have that franchise cleanliness standard that we can't enforce. At this point, we have maybe some say in it, but at some point you can't enforce standards on cleanliness. And so what are we able to do now to just, I guess, hide is probably the best word for it. So that's all
That's a lot. Thank
that was
you.
all I had.
That's some good details there.
I thought about it for a while. So
Well, I'll go next. I guess I'll start off with a few points that relate to what Chad was asking. My background is a little bit in development, but also right now is very much in environmental quality. And looking at the site plan as it's been formulated right now with the detention basin, and looking at, there's kind of a potential coalescing of wash water and rainwater mixing. And that's something that I'm very concerned about is getting, any of these contaminants into the ground source at this site. And so, I'd like to know, how that's going to be addressed, because coming off of that asphalt, if we've got oil, stains or anything like that, is that all going straight to that detention basin or the storm drain? How are we addressing that coming off of the concrete apron right there at the bay doors? So that's a concern to me. And I deal with that a lot because I build wash systems, closed loop systems that help, contain and recapture and treat wash water. So that's just kind of that lens that I see it through. Also, I share the concern about the site being, a very prominent corner. I think that, it is conditional use at this moment, for this very reason, to kind of discuss how to make this work the best. I think the recommendation to go with a masonry wall, I think is critical in this particular application. I'm excited to see so much foliage around the outside. Not every place that's in this industry has nearly this level of foliage, which I think is phenomenal. Big fan, big fan. I guess another question is, where exactly is the property line? And whose responsibility is it to manage from the wall to the actual road? Does the property line go right up to the road? No?
Which road are you talking?
South Weaver Drive.
So we're driving.
No, the right of way is where the fence is now.
So, okay, so we've got a fence that has a bunch of landscaping outside of that. Who maintains all that landscaping outside the fence?
Well, you would have to do it by agreement with the property.
Okay, so that's like a cross or an agreement with the city that the owner would maintain that city owned
Yes,
property.
we would want to make sure that
Okay,
that's not something the city has the ability.
manage and maintain. Yep.
I was gonna say, I'm glad you brought that up, because that was one thing I did notice on the landscaping plan. I love the idea of it. What happens when a tree dies or something does, we have accidents in that corner, cars drive over down that embankment, there's things can happen, who's then responsible for replacing it? Plus, given the proximity to South Weaver Drive where we have the trucks, the salt trucks clearing snow, all of that, what if the landscaping doesn't thrive? Who's then responsible for it? We're seeing it right now along 2700 East. Those beautiful, beautiful trees are all dead. They're, if not dying. So who's now responsible for replacing those? And given that it looks great on concept or on paper, and I would love to see it, implemented, but then the maintenance and, 10 years from now, is it gonna still look as beautiful as it was planned to be? 20 years, 30 years. So, yeah. And the winds. I hope we're gonna brace the trees to withstand the wind in the morning.
Gives them character.
45-degree angles.
If I could add, one of the things that we had, one of the reviews we had sent back was to add some enhanced landscaping. This is what came back. I suppose if there's concern about who's going to maintain that is an area you just leave as is. It doesn't have to be, maintained by the future plan for South Weaver Drive right there would be to widen it just a little bit for one more lane. Someday in the future that,
Mine ended up getting tore out anyways.
adjusted anyway. So that's maybe more some of the feedback that we could get from you. If that's really important to you to have that. That is UDOT right of way. So even though we're talking about an agreement, UDOT would have to
UDOT would
allow
have to buy
for
in.
that in the first place. So I mean, I guess it's not necessarily the indication of this particular site. 2700 is maybe just a little bit different. But it would be helpful to have, any comments that you have back on both of those roads, because both of them have a right of way line that sits quite a ways back from the actual pavement.
And there's no intention to ever put sidewalks along South Weaver Drive on, you know what I'm saying, like on that
On the south
property,
side- on the south side of
like
South Weaver
pedestrian
Drive,
walkways?
there
No.
isn't, because there's no sidewalk across the overpass.
Okay.
There is on the north side.
Yes.
But pedestrian traffic should be conducted to the corner and then cross
Okay.
over. Well, you could have crosswalks. Right now, we don't have either on the
east lane or the south lane.
Mhm.
Right.
But in the future, you could have crosswalks on
On
those
four
two
sides.
that are currently not there.
Okay.
But at any rate, you would conduct the pedestrian traffic down 2700 east, not along South Beaver Drive.
Okay.
Or at least on the south side.
And-
If they want to go on South Beaver Drive, they would cross the road to the
Yeah.
In the
Yep.
north.
And I did want to, I forgot to bring that up, but the foliage, like, I mean, that does, I mean, maybe when they're baby trees and stuff, they're not going to, but I mean, that kind of takes care of, if it was maintained, takes care of some of the visual aspect of it for
Mhm.
sure. I mean, it would, or at least draw your eye more to that than it would something else. And hopefully for the positive, not across the street and looking at that gigantic section now that's just dead grass. And I wonder, now I just look at it and I wonder, well, why is that big section dead? But I had just, and one more, so the only other thing that just to take into consideration, because it's come up with most of our other plans as far as like traffic. And I don't know if, and maybe I missed that in there, but if they did a survey, but I mean, on average, I would suspect that they're expecting a car count of roughly, I don't know, if they're competing, if I assume who their competition is and what they're competing for, then they're on average, I would suspect 60-ish cars a day on a normal day that would go in and out of there. Maybe on the high end, you're talking like 90. I mean, it is only what is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bays. So 5 bays that can be used for in and out, unless it's just strictly used to those, limited to those 3. But I mean, even on the low end, you're probably, the goal would be, probably 30 to 40. So I just know that we've brought up traffic and our concerns with, I mean, I think general RV is going to be very minimal traffic once they actually get moved in. So that one doesn't concern me at all. I just look at the issues, the things that have come up with this. And I mean, even the medical center, I think I would assume that's going to be fairly minimal too, but something like this could be rather high traffic and it likely more on a, maybe a weekend than other days too. I mean, again, they'll probably be closed on holidays, so it won't be like holiday traffic, but I would assume it'd be minimum. But anyway, just some things to bring up and consider. Again, I think it's great. I like how the plan looks. I love the foliage. Again, my concern is always just the same as it is with any like detention ponds that we talk about. And I wonder how green and grassy that's going to look in 5 or 6 years from now. So I would have that same concern on maintaining it. And as far as what he brought up with like oil and rainwater and stuff like that, I mean, it will, and I don't know what the fix is, and maybe that's where you might have like some ideas that we can recommend, but there will be, I guarantee, at least one time that a drain plug falls out somewhere in that parking lot and, several quarts of oil. Not because they aren't good at what they do, but you have human beings working on cars, and human beings will inevitably have personal things going on in their life and make a human mistake. So it'll be completely unintentional, but it'll dump,
What happens?
4 to 8 quarts of oil. And I mean, you can only, I mean, and this is where you would probably know more of the details on what that does, but I mean, it's just hard to,
Curbing.
I mean, it's just quick. So just something to consider. And and this is a new property. If I know that there's a lot of requirements, if we were looking at rebuilding or changing anything that we'd have to meet. I had planned on trying to go through like some of the OSHA standards on that just to get an idea, but I assume that they'll meet all that. But I guess I just wanted to bring it up as a concern for me that we don't really have anything really in the area that's, well, minus dust, that is that I know of that's contaminating our water or potentially contaminating it. And then this is something that's on the far east side that I don't know how that would actually work. I just know that it should be brought up as at least a concern, just to see what the plan would be to mitigate that as much as possible.
I can respond to both the traffic and the stormwater pollution if you'd like.
Sure.
Yes, please.
So what's been done so far on the traffic, is that there was a study done by WCG years ago on 2700 East. We have that study specifically. The future plan for that road is a 5-lane road. Anticipating that even though it's a short stretch, the uses along that road, they wanted to make sure that the traffic that's trying to get to neighborhoods isn't held up by the traffic that's trying to go to the businesses, that those could play together nicely. And the modeling that was done, computer modeling done for this area, this property was a fast food use. And so this use would be a less intense use. So therefore, we felt like the future plans are still adequately covered by what was anticipated there. So I don't really see a need for any additional study related to traffic, just as long as we stick with the future plan. The existing road, if it's not addressed in any way and widened in any way, in the future, I do think that the traffic will become very congested.
Yep, it already is right now without the business being there.
Yes, so my recommendations will continue to be to stick with the plan that was put together, that's in our transportation master plan. So that, I think, would address the traffic. When that project, the widening project, is to be done, well, I have no idea. That's crystal ball, and that will likely be just driven by funding, and obviously it's always driven by funding, but at some point in time, the traffic, the congestion on that road will likely be more than is desired by the city, and so that will be the other driver to maybe get that done.
When the
But
residents are not
exactly
messing
when that
around.
is to take place, I don't know. So what's being done here is that everything on the site is designed to that future right-of-way line. And, well, it's not future. The city actually purchased the property, so that is where the right-of-way line is. But that road can come in without affecting what's being built here.
Mhm.
And you said that does include the sidewalks? Or that's still kind of like a TBD?
No, it does. The future sidewalk is planned to be just integral with the
Property line.
curb and gutter.
Okay.
And it will go right up to the right.
Okay.
That's the future plan.
Future plan.
As far as stormwater quality goes, they've proposed some permanent BMPs, best management practices, for addressing when a storm happens. You get the oil. Hopefully they try to clean it up as best they can before it ever goes into any of the piping or into the detention basin. But even if some does, when it rains, that should be addressed in what they're doing. That part's still somewhat under review. They've provided a pretty good plan, but I think we still need to address maybe some mechanical controls to address the likelihood of oils, and perhaps it might be better to we need to talk about, because low impact development requires that some of the stormwater is infiltrated into the ground. Based on this use, we just need to talk more with the engineer on the site plan as to whether or not we think that should be allowed, or it's a good idea here, perhaps having a liner underneath the detention basin. So that your concern is valid for that. It's not quite totally reviewed yet. So I guess I'm just letting you know that we're aware of the concern and we'll continue to make sure it's addressed.
Cool.
And then I think that you can't do, I don't remember if that was, I think that's a state, like there won't be any drain in the floor in the shop. I don't think you can do that anymore, right? So that we shouldn't have any issues with like oil being pushed into,
Well, any drain that for the inside the shop should be going to the sewer.
through separators.
Really?
Yeah,
Also
that-
separator and then.
Okay, yeah, so I
And-
didn't
and-
see any oil separator here in the map yet.
Yeah, there-
Yeah, that was, I assume
Okay.
you would, and I didn't know if it was just gonna be, like, we do a 3-tier one. So it goes from 1 to the second, and then we do 3. It might be a little overkill, but I'd rather have the overkill than under on it, and then, or like maybe Young already has some really good practices in some of the other shops, like as far as like, like emulsification processes they do when they are in their separators, or like cleaning out their separators regularly. That was just my biggest concern. I mean, if you're using a floor scrubber to clean that on a, daily basis, I mean, inevitably you have other stuff besides just dirty water in that water. And so, which is getting put into the separator. And I mean, if that's being maintained, I think I am okay with it. Again, I think Commissioner McFadden probably has more insight on that process, but overall, I know I'm sounding like I'm actually not really I'm just bringing up, I think, legitimate concerns. I actually really support it. I think based on what I would expect revenue to do at someplace like this, I think it's a great thing for the city. I just think that if it's gonna be done, if we have the opportunity to ensure it's done right today, I don't want the, 4 commissions, 8 commissions down the road wondering what we were thinking and why we didn't bring up certain
What?
concerns with it. So, and this being that this is my world and what I do, I just, I know what it can bring and the accidents that can happen, and the things that are just end up being out of your control if you're also trying to keep customer satisfaction up and keep revenue up.
Sorry, we're just going over one of the pages on the thing. Commissioner Roberts?
Yeah, you guys have kind of addressed a lot of my concerns. This is your expertise. It was a deeper dive than I did.
Here, bring it back to the surface.
Yeah.
That's where I'm gonna be commenting from.
Which one of my concerns is, which I'm not exactly sure how you address it, is that large parking lot in that corner, and how do we address long-term cars and vehicles being there long-term? That's one area I don't know exactly how to do. I just don't want that to happen. The other one I just was thinking of, which I really agree with the tire storage and the masonry wall around it. Does the city, I mean, who maintains the compact road base going into that natural gas area? Is that Young? Okay, so they'll maintain that road entrances into the gas line.
That, I actually don't know for sure who
Okay.
maintains it. There's an easement with, you can probably see the easement line.
Yeah.
It takes up the majority, well, not the majority, but a good portion of the property for those petroleum lines in that control station. Where the valving is above ground, which is what you can see. The access into that fenced area, I don't know for sure who would maintain that, but I know that it would be important to the Holly Energy and to make sure that that's all functioning. I know they access that on a regular basis, so it's definitely not the city. It'd be between the private owners
An agreement.
and them. I don't think that that's something that we necessarily need to try to worry about or enforce. It'll kind of take care of itself.
Okay.
Because it would be important enough that they'll work it out.
I have a question on that one. It looks like there's a gate on the east end, the east kind of half loop access point. On the west, does that just dead end where there's the proposed parking? And kind of that one corner? I don't know if you guys want to pull up page, whatever page you think would be best. The gate one, I believe, is shown on page. This one's not numbered, sorry.
There's a date on both of these. So, yeah, I don't know if it's shown on all.
It's on the fourth drawing. in the packet.
You know what the page number is?
No, it's not showing. Let me see. C-105. Says sheet number C-105. That helps.
Page 13.
13 of the packet. Thank you.
Yeah.
So there's a gate where that red kind of hash line. Oh, holds while the computer renders.
That's why I downloaded it. I was like, this is painful.
And every time you move it, it like re-renders.
I don't know if that had coordinated with the gas companies. That's the access they wanted, that's where they wanted them, and that's the gates that they want, so.
Okay, but there are access points then where it ends on that west side. Because it looks like it's terminating into parking spaces, which again, the concern is if there's a vehicle there when they need to get access and all of a sudden that route is then blocked.
Well, the fire marshal, do you want me to go to my?
Yeah, thank you. And state who you are, just for the record.
Steve Peterson, architect, Case Law Hunter. So the gas company didn't care. They'll give notice for access, and so they were fine with parking stalls there. I think it was on the fire side. They shared the concern, and so we can just stripe it so they don't park there. That's not an issue there. But yeah, the access and the access locations were all coordinated with the gas companies for access to that.
I'd like to bring something up with the commission here, and just open up this door for just a brief second. The property line that is adjacent to the Highway 89, I feel like that is less important to be a masonry wall than the north property line. And so I wanted to just kind of get you guys' opinion on that, because, you know, that's a fast moving road. There's no, houses that are looking into that side of the property. I understand that, a masonry wall versus a chain link fence there's a big difference there. And that's a big part of the property. But anyway, I just wanted to kind of just kind of get your vibe on that a little bit.
I think
Can I
it's
just-
chain link fence, but
Yeah,
it's
right
just
now it's
masonry
not
around the
proposed.
tire.
It's not proposed to be anything other than it currently is.
Oh,
Okay.
And I
okay.
think the masonry was just a recommendation around the tire storage.
Right.
This little section right here
Okay.
would have masonry, the
And
8 foot,
And the
Okay.
where the dumpster is located does have masonry block
sure.
right here.
and the dumpster
Right.
enclosure.
Okay.
So maybe you're, not the words in your mouth, but maybe you're suggesting that the tire storage area would look similar.
Isn't it on the landscaping plan where it shows the fencing?
Yes.
Yeah, it's,
I mean, this is all chain link
Yes.
that's existing,
yeah, that's existing, yeah.
proposed. Well, and this is where they're saying
It's
masonry. And then this has got masonry around it, but everything else would be, uh-huh.
No, just, let's make sure we're talking about the same thing.
Yeah.
Around the
89.
tire storage, yes, there's obviously nothing there right now.
There's no tire storage in
No,
place yet.
but if you're talking fencing along property lines, the fencing that's there is what they're
Will stay.
proposing to just leave as is.
Okay.
And there's chain link right now in existence along 89, the border between the property and 89. Because that's your whole entrance on the other side. Yeah,
To clarify, so your concern was that we don't need a masonry wall around the whole property.
Yes. And
There is no-
everybody just went,
That would probably be worse.
we're settled. We're settled.
we're good on that one.
Yeah.
And is the entrance to the property, is that straight across from the exit of the car wash right now? Do we know?
I think it's offset a little bit,
It's-
but it's close.
It's supposed to be very close. It's not.
Okay,
There is a concrete right now that's across from where Maverick entrance between the car wash and Maverick,
Right,
but that's
it's
going
supposed to line
away.
up Exactly.
With the car wash exit?
but the car wash exit, not the
Okay.
car wash
Not-
entrance.
Yeah.
The shared entrance.
The shared
that you have.
entrance,
Okay,
yeah,
okay.
Yes.
which I appreciate that that's a little further off because that area is already
Yes.
so congested, and knowing that 2700 East is not going to be widened at any point in time in the future, this area, especially if this does get approved and go through, I drive it multiple times a day and it's already a pain. So this is only gonna add to it, but once it gets widened to the 5-lane road, obviously that's not gonna be an issue.
Right,
But
so
we just
once
don't know when
could
that's
see that There was
happening.
interest in some development on the east side of 2700. That's when we commissioned the
study.
transportation master plan to look specifically at that, so that we went into this with a plan and didn't regret access points later.
So, I mean, is there a projected timeline for completing the expansion of 2700 East?
No,
Not at all.
totally unknown, yes.
Okay.
And can you confirm that only goes up to the end of the property where the professional suites and the potential roundabout?
7800 is.
7800 is that
where- yes,
determination
and
point?
Again, it's a
Okay.
master plan is a roundabout. And the reason for that is if in the future, it's difficult to make left-hand turns, then we wanted to have the ability for them to just go down the road, turn around and come back. So, but that's master plan,
Yes.
and what actually gets built.
Could be something
you know, will be determined
As needed.
as it's felt is needed, so, but we do have the right of way for the roundabout.
So, I mean, there's no trigger at this moment that will say this is when we're going to start talking about this. Like,
Well,
there's no trigger on development, businesses opening, kid dying.
No, there's,
Or-
it would, like I
All
said
of
before, I
that
think
were
it's
showing up at a
largely driven
council
by
meeting.
Yeah.
the
everybody
desires
showing
of the
up.
residents to say, hey, we really want something to be done now. I think, you know, if I'm crystal balling it, that's what I think will probably drive it. But it will be held back by funding, because it will not be a cheap project, and so.
But that's what I'm saying, like preliminarily, like doing those budget estimates, you know, so that we have a figure to play with.
There's a figure that's in the, impact fee analysis
Mhm.
that puts at least the proportion that goes to the future of this widening in what we're collecting from impact fees.
Hmm.
So, yes, we are collecting through impact fees, but only for a portion of that. We're still gonna have to, there will be some funding that will have to come from the city, whether it's through any kind of grants that could be secured, or transportation dollars through the state, or, I mean, there's a host of places that we can try to pursue, where we are probably restricted by the fact that this is not a functionally classified road as a, you know, with regional significance.
Right,
So that may hold us back, but what we knew we needed to do was plan for it. So that's what we've been able to do thus far,
2 thumbs up.
and yeah.
Now it's sit
Okay.
around
funding
and
will
wait.
come as we can try to figure out how that happens.
I mean, do we as the land use authority make a recommendation to city council to talk about it?
You can certainly, if you, whenever you feel like, hey, we need to really.
Maybe that's the additional comment, yeah.
Here's another inserted comment.
That's funny.
Hey, we might need to get a timeline for actually widening, given that we now have
I,
all 3
I think
intersection
so.
corners.
I think
This will be our final intersection corner developed.
I'm kind of,
Yeah.
right there already. Like, I feel like we should have a plan for that. Like, I'll be the initiator on this.
Bring that up.
Nobody's,
That's a good point.
Yeah, you
It's a good
can
point.
certainly make, or if there's any kind of motion that you wanna make to say, hey, we really want the city council to take this into consideration, that can certainly be passed on.
in light of this proposal, absolutely.
It needs to be on their agenda
Yeah.
or radar
I would
Yeah.
agree.
sooner rather than later. This isn't a 30 years in the future widening project. Otherwise, this is
Yeah, it's
That
gonna
corner
get,
is
it'll,
gonna
it's
be
gonna
a
start getting out of
problem.
hand for sure.
Yeah, I don't think so.
okay. Sorry if we're making you stand up there, we're continuing our discussion. I would say, does anybody have any direct questions
Well,
for the
go ahead.
architects?
So on that, sorry, no, well. not
Maybe.
architect, Go ahead.
Because I would say if not, I'm gonna ask him to sit down, so he's not standing there
Well, if you want, I can
unnecessarily.
address some of the concerns.
Oh, if you have some
Yeah,
answers to
Go for it.
stuff, that'd be awesome.
What the Young's intent for this facility is. They do have some other, lube and small service, but, their intent is to grow that, to actually to relieve some of the pressure of the light service, oil changes, tires out of their big service space. They can focus more on big stuff and get that stuff out of there. So the intent is not to have cars that are dead in this. Again, that's the intent.
Sure.
And that's their mode, the motive right now for these facilities. The bigger parking lot isn't all just for storage for cars for the service space either. Part of their business plan for the facility is to potentially bring in some of their power sport rentals and use that parking lot for some of their display for their power sports rentals that would go through that same building as part of the Young Automotive Group, services that they can provide. So again, at this point, with their intent for building this is not for long-term storage. It's not for heavy service
Heavy
vehicles.
lines,
We've actually just finished a facility up in Morgan that's we call it a black box. It has no signage that they will send vehicles that are more long-term services, and they ship them up there to get them out of this. And this is really more for those the quick services things. In relation to site drainage and water and pollution, so most of the site water going to the sewer does drain and is collected and goes through a chamber system. And there's treatment's not the right word, but there is, to Brendan's point, they're still reviewing that system, but it is a system that does filter, I guess would be the right word, maybe.
Separate,
And
filter.
then goes into underground chamber. Now, some of that water does go directly into the retainage pond, but all that surface water doesn't just go right into that pond. It is, a majority of it will go into this underground chamber system
That's
prior
the
to it going
gold, yeah.
into
okay.
that,
Yeah.
into the retainage pond that's on
So
site.
is that like a storm tech system?
Exactly,
Yeah.
yep, exactly.
That's what I thought it was. It just wasn't labeled. And I was like, it looks like a storm
Yep,
tech
that's
system
exactly what it
sitting
is.
underneath the
And we
parking
do have a
lot.
series of trench drains that do collect near the doors and things like that as well to help try to control a lot of that. So, what other concerns I did?
Well, I guess if you might know some of these, then where did you have your like waste oil and?
So there will be, I don't know which vendor they're gonna go with. There's a couple different vendors are using, but they'll be using the cube system that will both supply and then the cubes that will collect their the waste oils and fluids and stuff. And that goes all inside to the bays where they will have those collection areas for the waste and.
Oh, then it's a complete exchange.
Yep, exactly.
So there's no pumping taking place on site to.
But there's a little bit of pump, but it's a closed system in there. So yeah, they won't be hauling carts of stuff around to empty and things like that. So.
And then the plan, I assume for like fresh, they'll run the pump system through like drop to the bays. Is that what the plan is?
Yep, exactly.
Fluid distribution.
So fresh will all be isolated to one specific area.
Yep.
So, okay.
And as far as the tire storage, we're waiting through the permitting process, but our intent is to change that to a masonry wall anyway. So that's not an issue.
Can you clarify what you mean by light services?
Brakes, tires, alignments, maybe they're not going to be tearing engines apart, right?
Yeah, I would assume that so some of their, like the competitors' model is that if it came in that day, that it leaves that day. So that would be, I would assume, the
That's
best
the
way
intent,
to describe it, that they'll want anything, if they can't get it out that day, or like very first thing, probably the next morning or whatever, can just be maintained within those, 5 bays, just really 2 bays, and then maybe the alignment rack like overnight. That's what I would assume those kind of services would be. Like Centerville Burt Brothers does a really good job at
not taking anything in, that you can drive by their lot in the morning and it's packed, and you can drive by the end of the night and it's pretty empty. That's like the best example. I don't think they do that with all their properties, but that one is a really good example. Like this one always has cars still parked all over the place.
Burt Brothers.
Yeah, at this
Former-
one.
Still Smitty's, formerly
It's
Smitty's.
Burt Brothers. They
There's
just-
something going on there. I
They
don't
bought the
understand.
name, so they
bought the name.
they retain the name Smitty's to use if they choose to,
But
but
but to your point, Young's, I mean, one of the reasons they want this site is it is very visible, and to that point, you know, it's their reputation as well to
Sure.
maintain this as a, you know, being as visible as it is.
The aesthetic don't look like
It's
a
in their best
junkyard.
interest
okay.
to do that, so.
Because that was one of my concerns, was that there wouldn't be long-term storage, long-term parking of vehicles. The other one was, are they gonna limit it so that it's not like RVs or larger
Yeah,
trucks, diesel
yeah,
trucks, something
it's-
like
They're not.
that size
That is
won't
not the
be,
intent, no, no.
because that's not gonna be fun going up 2,700 and trying to turn in there. Nope.
Yeah, and I don't know if you would know will it be an on the spot renewal location? Do they plan on? doing
I
that?
don't know if I don't know at this point.
Because that could potentially, the reason why I bring that up is because,
For registration.
well, and most service centers have avoided doing we just had to switch to the new computer, the new system.
Mhm.
And because the 2-speed test, which you have to do in RVs and stuff like that, is added like $5,000 to the bill.
Oh, wow.
But that being said, it's fewer and fewer centers that do it. So RVs are looking more and more places to go. So you might get them in there if they end up doing that.
Can't we
to
just
do
send them
that-
the general RV? Just be
Well,
like,
if they,
hey,
and if they plan on
keep
doing that
going on
kind of stuff, that's the thing.
84.
It's just like because they get desperate, because RV shops get so backed up sometimes that they just get desperate to like, I need to get this registered and go somewhere, and it requires that machine. And in most places have just done the OBD2 standard now, which means they can't do anything big and heavy. So that, just to answer your
That's
question,
good.
it could, but they wouldn't be working on it.
that's
They
not
would
the
just-
intent.
They would
and
just be pulling in to do that test, and then they'd be
they're
rolling.
quicker.
Yeah, like I said, the facility we just finished in Morgan is built for big
The longer
RVs,
term, the
tractors,
bigger
trucks,
things.
and all that kind of thing.
Okay.
yeah.
Oh, yeah, no tractors. You could actually get a potential tractor here in South Weaver, believe it or not. I think my only other comment, and this is something I pulled from the engineering report, was just that there's more parking than is needed. And I think I would really like to see a revision where some of the parking is taken out. And obviously, there's been a lot of conversation about the access points, back to the petroleum station and things like that,
Well,
or
that's-
the natural
yeah.
gas station. And just, I don't know, I don't think we need as much, but I don't know where the best place
And
is
that's-
to
that- Like I said,
reduce.
that parking is the intent, I think. is
show
just
lot,
To
right?
use that for some of
And-
their power
Showing.
sports display.
And with that, I guess if I could pick and choose what the solution is, it would be removing that outside row. And if it's gonna be for display at some point for that kind of stuff, building a berm, now you're
Natural
kind of
display.
hiding the lot, and it would create a better display to display side by sides and stuff at some point. I mean, that'd be me if I was doing it, because then you're hidden.
I'm designing
If
it.
if there's that one or two things in there that like.
So you
it's
talk
just like
about this west side road?
Yeah, just like if you move some of that, because the fence line's right at the spot, so you can't really berm there. But I'm just saying,
You're saying along
if
2,700?
we could get away with reducing the spacing on that outside row, you could just berm it. That creates
There's your
my
display,
concern with
the parking lot.
people seeing in there, should there be anything that is unsightly and you just don't really want to have to see it, or in 15 years, if Young decides to sell it to an independent, like I said, or something like that, and it changes, and then look, I just created awesome display space.
There you go. I had actually had a
I've seen
question
that
about the
up in
parking.
Morgan.
Yeah.
And it's the parking that's located on the south end
Mhm.
of where the bays are, that is the intent. Is that kind of supposed to be
It's shared parking.
shared
yeah.
parking
Mhm.
with what will be the salon suites, or not salon
Correct.
suites, but
Part of
the,
part of the agreement for that shared access was shared parking.
okay. And what is the white, is that landscaped? The white kind of, I don't know if you guys can pull up
Yeah, it's a landscape.
kind of a landscape strip that goes around it?
Yes,
I want to just clarify. One
Oh,
thing,
yeah.
If I can, so the reason I mentioned it in my memo was actually more as a highlight of typically the feedback I've always gotten is there's not enough parking. And so I was trying to highlight that
There's
This is
more.
great because there's more parking.
Than is needed.
Yes, especially on this side, I guess, where the parking requirement for Wasatch Dermatology was the fact that they had to try to get some additional parking on this side. I guess I don't, so I'm not recommending that we remove, parking. They certainly can because it's not required, but anyway, I'm just pointing out that I thought that was more of a benefit.
I think there's a couple of spaces based on the conversation and the discussion that we've had that make sense, especially from a safety standpoint and emergency and access standpoint. So we're not saying remove 25 spaces or
Well,
anything
yeah,
great.
not like I was saying,
crazy.
but- and you will have, I would estimate you're probably 12 to 14 on the high end on employees that, I mean, they're
They're
gonna
gonna
take
have to
up
have
12 to
places to park.
14 parking spots as well, so.
Let me also just clarify that even though we're thinking of this as shared, it's actually not shared.
Cause it's on the other side of the road.
These stalls were all allocated for Wasatch Dermatology.
Correct.
So just that, when you look at the total numbers, there's
Oh,
no,
okay.
there's
I see
no
what you're
actual
saying.
stalls that are considered both.
Gotcha.
They're all either Wasatch Dermatology or.
That's right.
Jones.
And that was
And
brought up.
And there's more than is needed, more than is required when you look at it from that perspective.
Okay.
So, it
Yeah,
does
sufficient parking.
allow for, maybe not feeling like it's so.
Yeah, I think that's great that, your explanation about that being in that northeast or northwest corner being a show lot, I think that's
Yeah, because it's not in
Valuable.
Young's best interest to put a bunch of crappy cars that are there for months either. so,
Sure,
yeah.
I
And
agree with
but I
that.
totally get the
Yeah,
concern.
it was just the concern of, like, I mean, if you go back to a lot of these guys that started as tire shops, like, they started doing service solely because Bay's stuff slowed down and they're like, we got to keep Bay's full. And then suddenly it turned into tires and service.
Right.
And so, and that service can mean, hey, if we have a tech that can do it and it's an empty bay right now, we're gonna try to tackle it. And then an issue happens and then, and then that happens once and then it happens again. And so, I mean, I would agree with you that based on, I work with Young quite a bit and I mean, on other side, but I'm there and see it quite a bit. I mean, I would agree that it's clean and in most every situation I can encounter. My concern was just if one day Young decides we don't want to do this anymore and the only person that can buy it is another repair shop.
Take
So,
5.
and now it's just, so that was my concern. My concern is not necessarily Young, and this is gonna be a brand new property. It's gonna look beautiful and awesome for at least 10 years before. So my concern is that after that 10-year mark, is it like when whoever was here approved, like, or forced or however, like all the landscaping got done around the pits and stuff like that. Like, I'm sure that looked amazing year one.
There's lines.
And
Oh, the berm.
like all the berm, and then time goes by and
It's not
less
maintained.
maintenance, and so that's my concern. That's my only other concern about the foliage too. If that's outside, I'm still confused on that part. So if that's outside the property line,
Maybe just
We're
part of the
just-
agreement.
we're just hoping that that stays in part of the agreement, which is just a lot. You don't drive a lot of repair shops and see that much foliage. And if you do, I bet it's probably not maintained.
Well, and if it grows in, it will look really nice in terms
It'll
of
look
being a
beautiful.
buffer.
If it's
It will look
maintained, if it's like
beautiful.
maintained, I think it
It's
would be
can
beautiful.
it be
Down in
maintained?
Centerville, the power sports we did down there.
Yeah.
With the.
I'm right across the
landscaping,
street.
It's gonna, so it's gonna be.
That looks great.
Yeah, and that
I mean,
looks
a
beautiful right
similar-
now.
phenomenal,
Right.
phenomenal.
That looks great.
So I agree. So,
And we're not gonna have people zooming past this corner as quickly as they are the one in Centerville, because they're on the freeway
True.
seeing that, so.
yeah, so like I said, my concern isn't necessarily with Young or them trusting that they'll manage it or anything. It's just, if for some reason Young goes a different direction in 10 or 15 years, what are we left with? Other than that, I really do like the whole concept, like I said.
Can I just to clarify, so we don't have to revisit this in the future, it sounds like this application has actually changed a little bit, so the request is really, tell me if I say this wrong, but it's really for a tire and service center and rental, which is a conditional use in these. in the CH. It sounds like that might be part of
That, I mean, that's what they're looking at doing right now, yeah.
So I would like to recommend that
That's a
you.
good catch.
You would consider that
Can-
part of this
Oh,
conditional
yeah,
use.
approval, okay,
Could be
yeah.
added in right now that, hey, it also might be rental
Okay,
and.
So we don't have to
So we don't have to come back. and do
repeat
it.
steps.
No, maybe you guys don't wanna do that, but it's not anywhere in the application. I can
Right,
see
right.
pushback.
and my question is, would it be appropriate though to continue it so that we can basically get all of the questions, the concerns, the kind of comments and suggestions and recommendations throughout the course of the conversation, so that when we do recommend, because I don't feel like
Well-
anybody is so opposed, but we know what we're actually recommending.
But aren't a lot of those issues, like site plan stuff, right? Okay, this is just for.
Well, this
the
conditional use.
use. I don't know if there's any discrepancies with the conditional use. I
Well-
think a lot of our questions were for what would come up on the next meeting
On the site plan,
that was coming. I think for the, minus the rental part,
that's the
but,
difference.
and if we have to continue for that, I mean,
have
if something
less
like this
concerns
is,
about
yeah,
rental
if
than
something's like this is
what
gonna
we've
go
already
in, I
discussed.
want the business to be successful because I don't want Young to pull out and now we're left with this big empty lot. So I would for sure want them to be successful, and Young has dominated power sports. So I feel confident that that would only help ensure that this stays as beautiful as I would like it to stay. So, I mean, but if by rules, we need to
You'll know.
continue for
You
that.
certainly can do whatever.
I would just
My
say-
vision was that this would be the land use approval.
Yeah.
And with the conditions of approval, I think add these things need to be addressed at the site plan.
Mhm.
Okay.
And going forward, the landscape must be maintained. Don't store the vehicles for longer than.
And the rental use would be.
Something like that.
Well, it's addressing the application and updating it to include the fact that it's now going to be also a display
Yeah, and I would
rental
say
That could just be another
knowing
conditional
that,
use though, no?
item.
You guys have discussed that you're okay with that being ATVs or, power sports
ATVs.
display area in that parking.
Yes,
Oh, given that, yes, this still works.
yes.
And I don't think it's an issue, but I think the land use approval ought to be, so we can keep going to the next level. and
Next step.
dig even
Yeah,
deeper.
definitely. Line item it
But it's
Yeah.
whatever you're comfortable with.
in the
If you'd like
recommendation.
them to come back and have more answers, I'm sure we can do that as well. But it's gotta go to city council as well. We gotta come back. for
And then
site
come back
plan.
for site plan.
So,
And I'd say my opinion is, I mean, I feel really good that for one that you, I mean, were able to answer and had answers for everything. If not, Brandon had a lot of answers for all of it. And Lance had everything mostly I think got answered. Some of the other stuff was just, I think, site use questions that if we later have any more questions about it, I mean, we still have plenty of time to bring up any of that stuff. And then, I mean, even if we can't just say we're good with rental right now, theoretically, that could just be another conditional use request at some point, even if it's not gonna be something, if they don't plan on even doing it right away anyway. So I don't know. I'm good with what I'm good with-
But I did wanna.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm good with the conversation that we had and what's going on.
Okay.
So, I mean, just to be clear, I personally am of the opinion that we recommend approval for the use of, the conditional use of this, tire shop and light service and rental
Mhm.
at this moment, to be recommended for approval at the city council.
Are you making a motion?
Well, I
I
wanted
kinda
to
feel like
say
you
it first.
I would agree, yeah,
With the,
yes.
with
I
the
think you have
county
your-
commission,
Yes, agreed.
yeah, okay.
Can I just add one quick thing for
No, nobody's doing it. Nobody's doing it yet. We're still discussing.
Just keep in mind that if we're dialed in on the uses that we're talking about, then that you made your recommendation and include any conditions relative to those uses.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah,
And it's a tire service and rental on the center. That's changed.
And you would recommend
Service
at
would
this
be,
point,
light service,
discussing the landscape that needs to be maintained?
the conditions,
Yes, okay.
whatever
yeah. the
conditions
days
you
that
want to
the
place on
agreement
it.
is,
Yes.
Yeah, in
Yes.
place. to keep
Or if
everything.
you want to remove it from the UDOT right of way, that's certainly something that you could suggest.
Well, we still have to get UDOT's buy-in because this is technically property that they control, correct?
Correct, so what I'm saying, I guess what I'm suggesting with that specifically is, if that is if what they propose is something that you want them to continue with landscaping inside of their right of way, then they would have to go and get that approval. Or if UDOT says no, then they would have to come back and explain to you why they can't get it. So if it's important to you to have it, then keep it in.
Mhm.
If it's not important, then just make that clear.
I think it's important.
It
I
is
do too.
important, yeah.
I would agree.
Any other questions, comments, conversation? Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Appreciate your information.
Yeah, thank you.
No,
I feel like you.
no, you got
Like
everything. You answered a
wanna
lot.
say some more.
No, you're good. You answered everything, so that's good.
I feel like I've said plenty.
Yeah,
I know.
we pulled up to the queue
Adding
here.
these all in, I think are conditions as well.
Okay, yep.
Do you wanna make the motion?
You have them all written down. so.
Yeah.
I can do it
Alright,
from
I can do
there.
it.
Here.
All right, I'm gonna make a motion then that we recommend for approval to the city council with the additional conditions for the Young Tire and I don't know if I have to specify light service, but I really want to make sure it doesn't turn
Yes,
into heavy
I would
service.
specify that.
So I'm gonna say light service and rental display center, because I think that was a big component of it. And with the conditions that were referenced in the possible additional conditions for approval for the masonry fence, the lighting, and the parking spaces in front of that natural gas substation, just that get included, as well as the maintenance agreement for the landscaping between the property line and South Weaver Drive to the north. And I think that was everything. Any other items that were noted during our discussion?
So you start, I'm sorry, you started out with, I was still back at writing the name down that you wanted, Young Tire.
Yes, so Young Tire and light
Service.
service and rental and display center.
And is there
And
a
rental and
limit for
display.
long-term vehicles?
Rental,
Like a-
display,
30 days, can we do
Center.
that?
Well, it's not just display.
Kind of like the park and ride, do we have a limit on that?
renting to display,
They cleaned up really good, by the way.
or displaying to rent. Yeah,
Not just the displays, the rent.
it's to rent. Yep.
We're
We're just gonna make people like them really much, but no, you can't. You just look, don't touch.
So do,
That's my line.
I'm sorry,
Michelle.
I'm sorry, this needs,
Yeah, go ahead.
so you want it to state Young Tire and Light
Light service,
Service, rental and display center? Is that how you want it?
yeah,
So that implies that.
Switch to display and rental.
display and rental center. Because there are going to be some vehicles that will be on display that aren't necessarily going to be the rented units.
The intent is for them to be for rentals, but
The
I
light
suppose they could
service.
be there for sale too, but they wouldn't sell them there, that's not.
Well, you sell more.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
That's.
Okay, and then, so on
is it
item
the
number
whole
one, you
other
have for
process?
possible conditions, you have what lamps put here on. here.
Yep, the
So you
tire,
have one,
masonry
two,
wall,
and three,
the light, site lighting, and then the gas station parking spaces. So 1, 2, and 3
okay.
And
Are
then
there any
4
additional ones? Okay,
was the maintenance of the landscaping area along South Weaver Drive,
Pending approval of the UDOT.
pending approval and agreements with UDOT
wait,
for
maintenance of landscaping along what?
20 or South Weaver Drive.
UDOT easement.
I just say
South-
UDOT
South
easement.
Weaver Drive to entrance.
Okay. To incorporate everything that's
Yes.
potentially
Maintenance of landscaping along South Weaver Drive and 2700 East.
east with UDOT's permission, approval, agreement,
Agreement, yeah.
whatever the best word there is.
Okay,
And any other items? can't think of anything else,
No,
From the
I think everything
discussion.
else would just be,
because it's the land use.
yeah, site use.
So, okay, that's it. That's my motion.
And you want to keep the one with the conditions of approval in the staff report as well.
Yes. And the conditions of improvement or in the staff. Because I think that summarized everything that you had. Yep,
So do you want it to state Lance's staff report and the city engineer's report?
yes, because I think that encompasses everything.
I'll second that motion just to keep writing.
And then I'm gonna ask for a roll call vote. Do you
Yes,
feel like you have everything first? Okay,
I just want to be.
Commissioner Roberts,
yes.
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 and I'm a yes as well. So conditional approval or recommendation for conditional approval will go on to city council. Will that be on their next meeting?
We'll try it.
Okay. And then as far as the site plan, is that gonna be coming to us in October,
We'll see.
possibly November?
We gotta work on
Okay.
As soon as for.
Just trying to make sure these guys don't get too used to not having planning commission meetings, so
Believe me, I'm not trying.
getting you guys agenda items. All right,
We need to iron it out so that it comes back and.
Yes.
it's ready.
Yes.
And so there's those requirements,
yes,
really to make the October meeting, you almost have to have the revisions and the stuff.
Yeah, that's light speed.
Back in.
nailed down Before the city council does the conditional use.
review,
Do the staff report and advertise.
okay.
Good.
So we've got basically a week. To nail that. all those
So
details.
Lance has some homework to do.
So maybe November.
It might be November. It's okay, we could do this. We're gonna go into the next item on the agenda. I don't know why you're packing up yet, we're not done. Commission, are there any reports, anything that, I don't know if commissioners, you have anything you guys need to report on?
I mean, me and Lance already discussed it and he brought it up already, but I would like to just acknowledge, since I brought it up 2 meetings in a row, that the lights at the storage unit are, I love that they handled it and they are the only property in that line right there that also cleaned up their weeds.
Mhm.
So I would like to shout them out for that.
Nice.
This week, the South Gateway project. we did get theirs.
Oh, okay, I could have missed something.
On
but-
what? Yeah, there was a vote.
So anyway, I just wanted to point that out since I'd
We were all yes.
kind of been negative about it for 2 meetings. So I was awesome. I'm glad it's just great having good people.
Took a little time, but. they did-
Yeah.
they did it.
And acknowledgement along with that is that park and ride, that cleanup of cars and.
They have
so
done,
good.
who was responsible for that? Cause it looks
Yes.
amazing. Like night and day difference, the park and ride, the resurfacing, the cleanup, the getting rid of the trucks and trailers
Yes.
and just garbage.
Yeah, I was
That had
just
been
getting ready to move in
accumulating.
and
That was-
now I can't.
Morgan Asphalt. was the
Okay.
one that did that. Was good. And, yeah,
Big thank you
Yes,
for
looks
doing
so
that because
good.
it looks so much better now. It doesn't look like a. I don't know what I
Storage,
was
yeah.
gonna say. Filter ditch.
Yes, it was good.
I have something to bring up and unfortunately this is not gonna be a happy comment. Do we have anybody from the city doing any oversight on the lofts project right now? On the lofts along 2700, the townhomes? So, just making sure that what was approved by the city is actually what's being built. I have concerns over buildings numbers 2 and 3 in terms of their building height. As far as I can tell, they were not built with the lay of the land and the slope of the land. They seem to be excessively high. And I have excessive concerns about the steps and the approach. There is a 4-foot solid cement wall now, right at the sidewalk, that is now the steps. And the steps are coming down and then going to a landing and then coming down with a very small slab. If you have not driven by it,
I thought it was
please drive
weird.
by it because I can tell you, there was never a concept or a rendering that ever came across this commission that ever showed that type of an approach for the buildings. There's no way you're moving furniture in the front of those buildings to get around everything with the railings. And I have concerns over the building height.
So it's the building heights for 2 and 3 and then the approach there.
On building 2, that's facing 2700
Thanks,
East.
sir.
Thanks.
And it's all of the steps.
I can tell you.
Somebody's
steps
there.
Are they? Okay, good.
did you say?
As far as their location, they cannot be right against the sidewalk, the right of way is a foot behind.
Okay,
So they will have to be outside of the right of way. As far as their height.
Yeah.
That's where the front.
I know.
is.
And at this point, it's not like we're gonna be like, hey, the buildings now get to be torn down and built the way they were intended to, but I kind of feel like the developer is just running amok. My personal opinion.
Well, that would have gone through the building permit process, and part of that is to review building heights and
Mhm.
all of that. That's not something that I'm involved with, so I can't speak to that,
Okay.
but it did go through that process.
Do we know who reviewed it and signed off on it in the city?
I believe the city hires WC3 is a consulting firm that reviews anything beyond just single family homes.
Are they an independent contractor?
They're a third party.
Just third party?
Reviewer, yeah, and I believe they use Jones Code to do the inspections. And Mark Larson is the building official, and so he's involved at least to some degree, but mainly I think it's the third party folks who have been
Okay.
doing that, so.
It's been very frustrating to watch because I don't think that was what was ever intended.
I kind of thought it was different, but.
Also, I don't know where the white came from because I'm pretty sure we had a lengthy conversation and not necessarily, you guys weren't on the commission at the time, about going with something that was more
Earth tone.
earth tones
tones, yeah.
and fitting in with the landscaping. And it started out that way. And then all of a sudden they painted them white. So I'm wondering where that came from.
If I recall though.
For now,
If
it's
I
Utah
recall,
trendy.
the paint, I think ended up being that we just, I could be wrong, and maybe we'd have to review minutes, but I don't think anything got written down, that
Officially.
it was a conversation because they were in here so much that
Mhm.
we just kind of like all agreed that it was gonna be that. And that he just reassured us that it would not come back, because I mentioned like being pink or something. I recall him saying that. And it's like, and he, we went
Mhm.
back and forth about it. So I don't know if anything was ever officially written down other than just to go back and forth that he assured us that it was, because we didn't want it to be the blue color like the farming, or not the farming, North Salt Lake,
Right.
the North Salt Lake one was, or
The
whatever. So,
primary colors.
so we might have, and as far as anything else that happened after that, but I don't remember, I remember having a verbal agreement on that we would do earth tones, but I don't recall if anything was written down about that.
Yeah.
And I know that was before your time
Well,
lapse,
no,
so.
certainly, but I mean, if there's something in there that we can enforce,
Mhm.
in the development agreement or something like that, and there are the wrong color, then we can pursue that. But if we didn't specify,
Okay.
then that's not gonna happen. I just pulled up the building plans. They're under 35 feet tall.
They are.
They look tall because of the kind of the scale and where they are, and the slope doesn't help.
Well, and they weren't built into the lay of the land, the way that I think the renderings showed them to be. I know.
So.
It's a rendering.
Lies. But anyway.
Blatant lie.
Yeah,
So
they're
we need to
similar
remember that
concepts,
for any other
right?
renderings
So
that get put in
they-
front of
they
us.
meet the building code.
They do, okay.
At least the height does, I can pull that up.
I just see the one building on building 3 and there's so much stone. And I'm just like. And I don't know how they're gonna get their road access to the next phase. Yep,
Okay, good.
yep.
Well, they're not done. There's still a lot of grading to be done. They've just been very,
Minimal.
yes, all that they had to do for those, because they're doing them by phase, which is basically by building. Well, not totally by building, but there's still a lot that has to be done in the back.
And they're only phase 1 right now, correct?
There's 1 and 2. So 1 is the.
One
is
was-
the southern building.
Yep,
And 2 is the building on the other side of the entrance.
Okay.
And that's all I know.
thank you. That was my only.
No,
That
that's
was
great.
good.
That's
Yeah,
good.
I had thought about it, but I got tied up in the,
Oh, and one other question. Do we have a American Planning Association conference this fall that's coming up? Or is that, does anybody interested? Do we have the dates? I don't know if you could maybe send out just
It's
a
coming
quick
right up, isn't it?
email
Like
to
this
everybody if
month?
they want to go. Because I believe that is something that the city does. If you want to go, you have to get registered. Lance, do you do that? I know Trevor used to.
Oh.
Do you know this? Or Raylene, is this more of a? Yeah, and the city has it budgeted because it's something that could actually go towards your,
Yeah, that.
thank you. I was like blanking on what the education, the continuing education, your training hours,
They haven't
so,
done anything, I don't think, this year.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's in the year already.
and that was it.
I would like to pursue making a recommendation to the city council about starting the process of determining when we should get that 2700 East Road expanded. Yeah, when.
Start the conversation now. I think it's appropriate.
I would second that. I don't know how we, as far as the way that the code statement's written for what light services.
Entails.
I would like to recommend an update on how that is worded in the code. Because
You're
it
referring to, like,
ends, it ends
streetlights?
with, no, as far as the
light
original,
service.
because it ends with et cetera.
You
And
don't like keeping that open-ended?
well, I mean, it depends, like, because like I said earlier, like if you ask me on, depends on what time of year you ask me and
How
what
business is
volume's been
looking.
like on what I would determine light services. Because maybe doing an engine on a, big diesel truck is light service when that's what there is to work on that day. So I just think that it's, if we're gonna, just for future, I don't know if we would approve another one of these to be here, but I think maybe update in code. I mean, this would be a code committee thing if we ever do that again, I guess, potentially, but
I see that.
I would just
see
say
that
if-
going
if
into
we-
definitions
if we could just like
in our
get more,
code, that light service is
Yeah,
defined by
okay, yeah.
thus.
yeah,
and that
just more
way-
detailed and not ending, or even just taking off. I mean, I would add in a few more things that's on there, but not ending with the word et cetera. Like that's the part I read that and I was like, that's why I brought up my concerns that
Yeah,
I brought
sure.
up, because I'm like, well, depending on what time of year you ask me, I will define everything as light service.
Mhm.
And depending on the technician, I have technicians that would define things that I wouldn't consider light service, because they can do it with their eyes closed.
Yeah, that's an ambiguity spot.
Yeah.
that-
When we can pull and
vulnerability.
do a engine swap on a pull and motor in and out of a Subaru in a half a day and have it running. I mean, that's light service. It was in a half a day, but now you have messes of that kind of stuff that can back up. So I would just like to, say that whatever the process is, that we can maybe further define.
Well, and just to
what
be
that
clear, you're
means.
saying light services, have that being defined, not light industrial services. Like
No,
we're
just for
talking-
the automotive, because there
For
was
the
that one, and then
automotive.
there's like the major that
There's
kind
minor
of,
and
yeah,
major.
minor and major.
Yep.
So whatever, that process is, I would be interested in
Seeing that.
being a little bit more defined on what that means and entails. I think that we lucked out on it being young, and I do trust that what their plan and goal is on what they want to do. So I don't think that'll be an issue. But like I said, in 15 years, if somebody else moves in and it's that guy
Yeah.
that just needs to make it work. I mean, Shade Tree's buying up a lot of stuff right now too. And if they decide, light service to them is going to be different than what it is to a big franchise.
So we bring a giant boat and parking it.
And none of it's gonna be that. I mean, most, you're not gonna need shops to work on weird, crazy stuff like that. Nobody's gonna bring a tractor in. It's just too different. You'd have to have a technician that worked in something like that your average technician isn't gonna do that. To take on that other weird off big stuff, just too big and too different. Anyway,
One other
that's-
comment, weeds, have we
For sure.
noticed been given to the property owner across from, okay, thank you. Just noticing a bunch of kids running around and running in that little junkyard.
Yeah, response to our letters.
Okay.
certified letters.
That city's on it. To the best of your
The
ability.
enforcement Process is undergoing.
Oh, speaking of enforcement, do we have code enforcement right now? Anybody that's designated for that, or is that kind of
Designated, yes.
designated? Yes, who? You?
I knew that
So if
was-
anybody needs anything, I can send them your way.
Absolutely.
And
Alright.
one area too to address, I think I brought up last time, is it's the area that we had the discussion about, the heated, I won't say heated, but big one about in that corner.
Yeah.
That's pretty overgrown, especially on the Old Maple road right there. Where they, well, General RV took out cement blocks on the sidewalk, which is one issue. And then there's just weeds along that pretty big area. And then the kids, I don't know how you dress it, but then the kids start going into the house and, you know, going all in that area.
Are they going into the construction site?
No, in the house that's in that corner across from General RV.
Oh, okay.
Yes,
So the Cooper's Landing, Shane Furness that came in.
Yeah.
yes, that
The
one.
vacant.
Yes. Just addressing the weeds and stuff on Old Maple Road specifically, between the water line or whatever that is right there. And the,
The water
Town
pump
United
station.
States of
Yeah.
America.
yes, the United States of America owns that. And but General RV did take out the sidewalk there a couple months ago to get power. And so that's still out as well.
But that does remind me of, did the sidewalk get repaired where it was torn up in front of the storage units? I just watched a little girl riding her bike to go to school and she
It-
fell
it
in
had
that
heaved.
spot.
Oh,
It had heaved, and so rather than have the heave there, they just took it out.
Yeah, it's really bad. I mean, she fell. I made sure she got up and was good, but
oh,
like she tried to ride her bike through it and
just thought she could go
didn't
over the
make
top of it.
through And it took her a minute to, then she kept trying to ride out of it. Anyway, it was a whole thing.
Oh,
You
But-
put her four low.
Well, I was just trying, I wanted her just to walk her bike out, but she kept
Just
trying to
walk
ride
out.
out of it. But I was just like, if it's night, if that's happening during the day, cause it's not taped off or anything. I mean, I assumed that would have, I didn't double
Phones or
check on my way
something.
here today because I was rushing, but I just, how long our time is between prep and
Phil,
pouring concrete.
That was a little more complicated because it's south of the drive.
and it's got UDOT engagement.
Same with the big one that came up down.
Like
Here,
Cook's Cove,
Yeah, there's
that
another
giant heave, I
gigantic.
love that one.
It's a big
When
old
I ride my
jump.
bike, that's like,
Hey, you can catch arrow. that one.
Yeah,
It's just an
yeah.
extension of the
Yeah.
BMX bike path.
It's like,
That reminds me, there was that public comment that was brought in about the congestion in front of Highmark Charter School and the cars idling and just the pollution. I will say it was a very colorful, there was some editing done on the memo.
Yes.
You guys all saw that, right? The public comment about the idling and the cars and the
Redacted.
pollution.
He had
There was some
He had a
redaction.
special name for it.
He had
yeah.
a special name for it that was
That was
redacted
good.
in his memo. I'm just wondering, is there any conversations that's currently taking place with Highmark? And it's been an issue since they went in, not having sufficient parking for cars during pickup and drop
some new
off.
signs out there on South Loop Drive.
Yeah.
You just got pinned into the ground or into the sidewalk.
Oh.
On the
I
other
know they're
side.
finally marking their no parking zones, so parents don't park there. I don't
Yeah.
understand why people go 3 hours before school ends just to be able to be first in line for pickup, but
I have no idea. what
those
the
are all
fix
personal
is.
choices.
I have no idea what the fix is for all that. That's
No.
just a madhouse.
My understanding, this is just secondhand, obviously, but the city had an agreement with them to change the circulation and the pattern. They were supposed to implement that, they did not.
Oh,
Okay,
Code enforcement.
What are we gonna do?
what do we do? And they know they're supposed to have it internal to their,
Churches and schools are cut.
okay.
Has the property that's in between Maverick and Highmark been sold? Do you know?
We haven't looked them out today, it's on my Maverick.
Okay, I thought I saw that Maverick had purchased the property. I'm wondering if we know what they intend on doing with it or, Okay.
No, they're on
so they're the parcel owners now. Okay,
Did you see that?
they've got the money to pay the 1.5 he was asking
It's
for.
not even a full year.
the.
Sorry, I'll-
yeah.
Conference is on, October 10th and 11th.
Oh,
$15
They're all packed up.
Okay.
They should be
for a
open.
planning commission citizen planner.
And you said it's in Provo?
It's in Provo.
Okay.
I'll send you a link here shortly if you want to register.
Okay.
I don't know, like,
Yeah. Okay.
Maybe not a hotel.
No, I think any personal expenses were on you. They just paid for the conference. So
Where is it this year?
Provo.
Provo.
Well, it's Utah Valley Conference Center.
Oh,
I'm
UVU.
by Provo.
Oh, okay.
A UVU then?
And then I just want to shout out everybody for whoever involved in South Labor Days.
Oh, they do amazing
I
job
thought,
every
I
year.
thought that went really well.
What was your favorite part? Feedback up?
No, it was all, this is my first year like participating and stuff, so we did the 5K as a family, so that was fun. I decided I don't like running.
That's all it takes sometimes.
Note to self.
And it didn't drop me, and it starts at my house.
No half marathons for
Well,
you
it
then?
starts at my house, but it does not end at my house, so I had to figure out how to get home
Oh.
afterwards.
No loop.
I'm like, wait, why am I still going this way?
All right.
I competed in the pickleball.
Yeah, I thought it was-
Anything else planning
was great.
commission related?
Nope,
City
no,
related?
I'm
Okay,
good.
then I'm gonna move that we adjourn the meeting.
A second.
All in favor?
Yes.
Hi.
Yes.
Aye. Done.
Circle or something?